This is a sermon for May 21st, 2023, and I'm going to read from 1 Peter 1, 5 through 11. All of you, leaders and followers alike, are to be down to earth with each other. For God has had it with the proud, but takes delight in just plain people. So be content with who you are, and don't put on airs. God's loving strength is in you and all around you. Live carefree before God as you learn to trust. Stay calm and steady. Stay alert. Evil is poised to pounce and would like nothing better than to catch you napping. Keep your guard up. You're not the only ones plunged into these hard times. It's the same with God's people all over the world. So keep a firm grip on faith. The suffering won't last forever. It won't be long before this generous God will have you put together and on your feet again. Well, lately the scriptures have been collections of wisdom from Jesus and from the leaders in the early church. Each one has specifics that are wonderful. 1 Peter says, God has had it with the proud, but takes delight in just plain people. Be content with who you are and don't put on airs. Live carefree before God as you learn to trust. This is so great. In 12-step groups, we share our failings and our flaws, and we don't focus on those. We don't stay focused on those. We simply mention them. And then we move on to how we're learning and how we're getting better. How are we changing and maturing? That's the question. We take responsibility for our actions in 12 steps. We make amends where it's needed. And we choose to do better in the future. First, we're honest. When you are open about failings, this is part of the responsibility of being human. It's hard to be proud and put on airs when you're open about your failings and your flaws. We're really all just plain people, aren't we? We can be content with who we are, because who you are doesn't mean that you stay that way. That's the key. In fact, mindfulness teachers say we have to recognize reality before we can move on to change things. Tara Brach helps people remember RAIN, R-A-I-N, which stands for recognize, accept, investigate, and nurture. So recognize is the first step. Recognize what is, and then accept it, even if it sucks. But we don't stop there. Allow is the second letter in RAIN. Carl Jung said, what you resist persists. And the more you resist, the bigger and stronger what you resist will grow. That's wisdom, but it's paradoxical. It seems the opposite of what's true. We immediately want to resist what we don't like, push it away, hold it off, deny it. When you fight reality, you suffer. This is a Buddhist thought. When you fight reality, you suffer. I could continually go on diets and fail over and over and over again, which is what I did earlier in my life. For decades, I did that until I gave up dieting completely because they don't work. What they do is you gain more weight each time you go off the diet. And so people used to tease, oh, you're going on a diet? How much weight do you want to gain? Which, again, is the opposite, because if you resist, it persists. It takes a life change to make a big difference. And to beat a deeply ingrained pattern, it takes a life change. And so even people with 100% certainty that they're quitting cigarettes, it takes them an average of 7 times over however long a period of time. 7 times they quit, they're 100% certain that they'll never go back, they go back. And then they smoke for a time. And then they quit, and they're 100% certain each time that they're not going to go back. 7 times over and over and over again. And that's the average. It's amazing that the number's not higher than 7 times. That would be encouraging. Although for some people it is higher than 7 times. So, yeah, the last 2 letters of rain, recognize, allow. The last 2 letters are investigate and nurture. We question what is with curiosity, and then we nurture self and others into new life. So we question, really what we question is our perception of reality. Reality is reality. And so, we question our perception, because our perception could be very personal, could be wrong. What it takes to changing your life all around the behavior you want to lessen or eliminate, or around things that you really dislike about yourself. And so it takes a complete life change. Sure, hitting your head against a wall, there's not much in the way of reward. So you can quit that. You can do that once, and then you can quit that. But things, the patterns in our lives that have deeply embedded rewards in them, which could be anything. For me, eating sugar had an embedded reward. And then in the long term, it was very destructive for me. People that avoid responsibility, that becomes a problem. But it has a reward, which is immediately you don't have to worry about it. It's a life habit. Some people have, they not only want to avoid the immediate hard work, but they want to dance on to the next adventure very quickly. And how about challenging people over everything? Some people have a deeply embedded behavior of challenging people over everything. And the advantage of that is they back down. And then you become accustomed to people backing down. And it takes tremendous change to change that behavior. And, there are other patterns too. The type 4 in the Enneagram, we increase the drama around things. We exaggerate the reality. Our perception of reality becomes greatly exaggerated. And that has its own reward. Life is intense. And so that has its own reward. The type 5 in the Enneagram tend to retreat behind a wall, and there's great safety in retreating. But the reward is that you're safe, and you feel safe. But the problem is that people long for you to be connected with them, and then you aren't. The type 6 tends to have the deeply ingrained problem, or habit, I should say, the deeply ingrained habit of preparing for disaster all the time. The worst is going to happen. I'm going to be prepared every step of the way for the worst to happen. The problem with that is that very often the worst doesn't happen, and then you spend your lifetime preparing for the disaster and fearing it and worrying about it and spending time and energy on it. So again, all of these habits of behaviors, they have resistance in them, which causes the pattern to persist. And so, Peter says, First Peter says, you're not the only ones plunged into these hard times. It's the same with God's people all over the world. So keep a firm grip on faith. The suffering won't last forever. And that's part of the reality. That's some of the wonder of reality, is that suffering won't last forever. Nothing in this temporary life of ours lasts forever. Everything is constantly changing. And then 1 Peter goes on to say, it won't be long before this generous God will have you put together and on your feet again. This is what I mentioned last week. God as a mother can help us heal what hurts, that might be wounded, and then set us on our feet and say, now for the next adventure. Let's go. So the suffering won't last forever. Inmates in the concentration camps when Elie Wiesel in World War II, he observed the suffering seemed to last forever, and even he knew it wouldn't, but it felt like it for sure. And so they might have questioned the wisdom that it won't last forever. But Elie Wiesel observed individuals sharing the one crust of bread that they had left. And he said that is making meaning out of suffering. It's creating meaning in the midst of suffering. And he was amazed by people's ability to do that. So First Peter goes on to say, live carefree as you learn to trust. A big part of healing and maturing in life is letting go of the unhealthy stuff that no longer serves us. Whether it's a pattern or a substance, whatever it is in life, we can let go. Trust is closely related to surrendering. And when we surrender to what is, working with what is, then we can embrace new possibilities. Trust involves mutual care and being curious about what could be new, what might be different. That's what we can ask in the midst of hard times, in the midst of suffering. What might be different? The love of God as a strong, skilled mother or a compassionate papa is a good foundation for trust, for surrender, for growing up. First Peter says, let's be down to earth with each other. Let's be down to earth. Let's be just plain people together. Let's be honest about what is. Let's be down to earth with each other. Humility and dirt and composting. These are all related words, and they have to do with us as God's beloved. Amen.